Welcome to episode 2 of the GrailCast. So, your executive briefing on privacy. Today, I'm thrilled to have Lauren Nardoni joining us from CB Insights. Lauren and I actually met over coffee, I guess it was right before the holiday, right in New York. And
Yep.
frankly, I've just been a massive fan of CB Insights for such a long time. And when I met Lauren, I was like, she'd be perfect to come on the show. So thrilled to have her join us today and looking forward to a lively conversation. I think just a bit of background on DataGrail. So DataGrail is a complete AI-powered data privacy platform for global brands like Databricks, FanDuel, and Restoration Hardware. So maybe, Lauren, do you want to just give us a bit of background on how you got to CB Insights, what was the journey in between, and then we can kick it off and get started.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Daniel. Excited to be here, and hopefully everyone will be thrilled and entertained and learn something new from our conversation today. So my journey to CB Insights is, I think, a little bit different than most in-house attorneys. I actually started my career in-house and stayed in-house. I think that was primarily because I graduated law school right after the market crashed in '09. And so
Mm,
there wasn't a plethora of jobs available.
yeah.
So I
Yep.
spent about a decade at a conversational AI company that's a mid-sized public company called LivePerson and came to CB Insights, which is a much smaller private company that focuses on predictive market intelligence a little over a year ago. So it's been an incredible journey, an incredible in-house experience. And I'm feeling certainly very lucky to have this be my first opportunity to be general counsel and then chief legal officer. So super excited to be here.
Love it. Yeah, I just we talked when we met over coffee just on your journey from Lab Person. I don't know, anything you want to share there? Just I'm sure you learned a lot through the time of just like what that experience looked like and some of the things we talked about of just like the company growth and where that went. Just curious if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So during that 10-year, I would say both us as consumers and how we wanted to interact with the companies that we do business with as consumers really shifted over that decade. So
Yeah.
when I first started, we had just launched a website where users could communicate through just a very simple chat window on a website. No one was talking in mobile apps or in,
Yeah.
in any you know,
AI chatbots.
and
Yeah.
any AI chatbots. It was
Yeah.
just a chat window that popped
Yeah.
up. And then over the years, we said, we think we should be in mobile devices because everyone is talking to family and to friends through mobile devices. So we should meet our consumers where they are. We were really encouraging our customers to digitally transform and change their customer service experience. So that's when we launched mobile apps, and then came chatbots and AI, and a whole host of new tech towards the end of my 10-year journey there. So it was really an interesting experience, both from a privacy and compliance perspective. I was
Right.
there when
Right.
GDPR came into effect, and we LivePerson is and was a global company, both from an employee perspective as well as from a customer's perspective. So we had employees globally, we had customers globally. So we really had to think thoughtfully around how do we build an ever-changing SaaS business in compliance with global regulations. We were
Yes.
clearly a much larger company with somewhere between 1,000 to 1,500 employees during the time that I was there. So we had dedicated compliance and privacy teams, in addition to the legal team that I was on. So it was a
Yeah.
really great experience to then come to a much smaller company where my legal team, my very small legal team owns all of privacy, all of compliance, all of
All the
legal,
things. Yeah.
all the things that
Yeah.
make our days super fun and interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, along those lines, I think, something that stood out to me is like how you're thinking about, equal AI and that program that you did. I'm curious, like, what did you learn through the program? How do you think about like similar frameworks or different leaders in the organization, and working with engineering to think through that? Because I think that's something that obviously a lot of legal teams are thinking through. And yeah, would love to hear your perspective there.
Absolutely. So Miriam Thogel set up Equal AI, and she has a long history of working in Congress and working with our former presidents on responsible AI. And so LivePerson had a very close relationship with Miriam and with Equal AI. So I really had the benefit of being able to participate in their Equal AI badge program. In essence, it's like a 2 to 3 month intensive program where you work with uh, members of a lot of different collegial communities. So both privacy professionals, compliance professionals, attorneys, it's certainly there's about I think 20 to 25 to 35 of us that would get together once a week for about 2 to 3 months, and really Miriam and her team would bring in thought leaders to talk
Mm,
about how much larger public companies are setting up responsible AI programs, what their challenges are, what has worked well, what hasn't worked well, to us doing sort of like real life examples to think through what's something that we can do at our own organization that can take a lot of the learnings that we talked about together as a core group together.
right.
So it was a really nice way to bring a cross-functional team together to think through how do we solve what's happening today and how do we solve what we think is coming in the future. And I think for a lot of companies, both big, small, public, and private, those are the kinds of questions that come up every single day when we're thinking about AI because it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. So one of the learnings that I've taken away from that we both implemented at LivePerson and I've implemented here at CB Insights is to think about responsible AI and AI governance as something that's not just technical in nature. It
Mm,
really has to be something that it's a leadership imperative, right? And so you
mm,
really want to start at the top of your organization and come up with, well, what are those AI principles that we want to stand behind as a company and really represent as a brand? Most companies, I think, focus on transparency and minimizing bias.
right.
But what else? Like what's core to you as a company? When I was leaving LivePerson, we were finalizing our responsible AI governance. So
Mm,
we're putting those principles together. But here at CB Insights, we are focusing because we are an AI company. A lot of
right.
our
Right.
product features and offerings actively include predictive market intelligence. So AI is
Right.
part of our core product offering. Our teams are using AI internally. My legal teams and I are using AI. So how do we represent ourselves as a safe, secure, and trustworthy company? Those are the three sort of adjectives that are core for us for our responsible AI principles. So I think that's sort of step number one. Step number two is really ensuring that there's a true cross-functional alignment when you're thinking about putting an AI governance program in place.
And what does that
Uh,
look like? Who was involved? Like, who's involved at CB Insights, and was that similar to what you saw at LivePerson? Because obviously different size. So I'm super
yeah.
curious there.
Yeah. So here, because we're only 185 people and we're all located within the US, even though we have customers globally, we're primarily a US employee-based company. So we have legal, myself, my head of security, my CTO, and my head of data science get together at least once a month, sometimes a little bit more often, to talk through what are the policies and protocols and processes that we want to put in place? And then how do we actually make that resonate with our technical teams?
Right.
Because just having a policy or a process or a document telling you what you should do and what you shouldn't do is great. But if it's not translatable into easy to understand terms and it's not practical and
Yeah.
fits their day to day, then that's usually where I find companies get into trouble, right? So
Yeah.
we have, and we're still finalizing it. We've actually put it together and it's a work in progress. It's agile. It's never stuck in stone. We have a Confluence page, an internal Confluence page where we list out, here are the approved enterprise AI tools that the entire company can use case notwithstanding.
Yeah.
However, if you're in product or engineering or data science, here are the other tools that you're also authorized to use. If you're
Mm,
in sales or marketing, Here are the other tools that are approved for your use case. Legal is not necessarily included in that list just yet because we haven't finalized all of our internal tools, but it's trying to be pragmatic and thoughtful and also meeting our teams where they are, which I
Yeah.
think is
Yeah.
a point that is really, it's easier for me to think about at a much smaller organization. At a much larger organization, what I normally see is you start at the top, right? So there's the audit committee with the board that typically reviews and oversees insight from the executive leadership team on what they're doing with responsible AI, what their objectives are, what risks they're thinking about, what risks they're foreseeing that are actively happening today, and how they're addressing that. And then there's sort of usually it's some form of one or two steering committees that are
Yeah.
happening as well, and that usually includes security, privacy, legal, product, engineering, usually data science if that's a part of the organization. But the teams that are often not included are HR, right? I think
Mm,
IT sometimes can be left out
mm,
because you've got security and product and tech
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And then once you have those steering committee meetings, there's usually a level below that also has other meetings that are sort of executing on whatever the strategy and the vision that the steering committee is coming up with. So it's
Yeah.
it's much more bureaucratic, and that I think has pros and cons depending on how your organization is structured and what's practical for you to really operate.
Yeah.
One of the lessons I learned at LivePerson was to think about rotating who sits in on those team meetings. So
Mm,
like my legal team at LivePerson was about 14 to 15 people, and here it's three. So I had a lot more flexibility with having myself or other members of my teams rotate into
yeah.
those
Yeah.
sort
That
of
makes sense.
not the steering committee meeting, but sort of the more
One
practical
level below.
hands-on
Yeah.
meetings to both get exposure, get experience, but also bring a different perspective
Totally.
as well. So I like to think about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I will say probably 6 to 9 months back, we did put together like a RACI for different company sizes of who owns AI governance and how does that, best structure.
Hmm.
Definitely reflects what you just described and the different teams involved. And I think it changes based on company size and whether the company is orientated towards a consumer or whether it's orientated towards a business, like whether it's B2B
Correct.
or B2C as well. Um, One thing I think that was interesting, and we were talking about this before we jumped on. I think a lot of teams are trying to acquire AI, and we went back and forward on this over email of like acquiring different AI services or using different AI services. What have you seen there? Like, what has worked for you? I think some practical tips people would love to hear because I'm sure different functional teams are coming to them asking, "Hey, we want to buy this new tool."
Yeah.
How have you, seen that work and any, points you'd provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everyone, if there's a meeting that we're having where somehow an AI tool is not coming up or use of AI is not coming up, that I would love for one of those meetings to happen. I think they don't happen all too often.
Yeah,
Um, but generally, when someone or team wants to bring in a new AI tool, we have a really simple process. Again, because we're a smaller private company, so we can keep it
yeah,
small. But it goes through finance for budget, IT for security, and legal for terms. And usually in that conversation, we're asking questions like, how is it being used? What systems is it integrating with? What data are we talking about? Is it our client data? Is it employee data? What purposes is the data being used for? How is the AI, like what's the AI tool going to do with the data that we give it?
hmm,
I think all of the same kinds of questions that I think typically come up in privacy conversations,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it reminds me a lot about the questionnaires that we would fill out for GDPR when GDPR came into
hmm,
place, right?
hmm,
I view AI governance very similar to a lot of the privacy controls that we put in place for GDPR. So once we've gotten answers to those questions and feel comfortable with moving forward, then either we're going to negotiate the terms if we don't have the right reps and warranties in the agreement from the vendor, if we don't have the right indemnification and limitation of liability controls that we're looking for from a risk perspective, really having clear documentation on what their privacy process and protocols are, what their security process and protocols are. If it's somehow not included in the agreement, which can
Yeah.
happen from
Yep.
time to time. So we at CB Insights also built an AI addendum, both for our customer agreements as well as our vendor agreements. I think
Mm.
it's a lot more common that vendors are proactively offering that where
Yeah.
asked.
Yeah.
Again, but because we're a smaller company, we have a lot less leverage to negotiate the vendor
Mm.
agreements that we engage with. But it's still an active cross-collaborative discussion with our respective finance and security and IT teams for
Totally.
sure.
Yeah, it's I posted on it yesterday and you might have seen it.
I
We've
did.
seen a large number of folks producing AI addendums and all different varying sizes and shapes and forms and requests.
Yes.
It's an interesting world because, I think the DPA structure, right? We've got standard contractual clauses. We all understand that those don't typically get modified. In
Right.
fact, it's kind of strange if someone asks for that. But in the AI addendum, there's no governing body or structure in place right now. So it feels very wild, wild west of what people are trying to put together, trying to advocate for. Don't know if you'd
Yes.
have any advice for folks. Obviously you're in a position as CB Insights, to your point, you're a technology company, so you've got your own document, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Any tips you'd have for folks thinking about that process or trying to, you know, help their cross-functional group?
Yeah, a couple. This is more largely like a sales enablement, I would say, tip.
Yeah.
But I think what we've really strived and thrived to do is to create, like, we have an FAQ for our AI offerings. So we
Yeah.
answer a host of questions that it's we offer a RAG type of AI offering. We don't have our own LLMs, that we're not training any AI with the data that is being processed through the features that are leveraging or that are being powered by AI. We list out the AI tools that are powering our
Hmm.
services. And I think that helps give the customers and their respective procurement, legal, privacy, and security teams the visibility about what they're actually buying and how their
Right.
teams are planning on
Right.
using our data and our platform. On the flip side, when I'm the vendor, I love when I can go to a vendor's website and find that information readily available. It's super
Mm.
helpful for my own internal review. But when we need to sort of negotiate either an AI addendum or the agreement as a whole, um, I think there's sort of a wide range of positions, right? I think some
Yes.
companies like to take the approach of you can't use AI at all, and that's just not practical. So
Yeah. 2026, that's
I
not
just
going to
don't
work.
recommend that as a
Yeah.
starting point, but I
Yeah.
understand that there are a lot of heavily regulated clients who are very heavily enforced and they need to put boundaries in place.
Yes.
But a
Yes.
one size fits all boundary or document is hard to negotiate with,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We've received countless AI addenda where our clients can sometimes say, if you want to use AI, go ahead, but don't train out our data on it. Don't improve the
Mm.
model on it. Great.
That's
That's no
fine.
problem.
Yeah.
But where we get some of the documents that say you can't use any confidential information with any AI, the question I push back on and say, well, my CLM uses AI and
Mm.
I'm leveraging AI in my CLM to process your agreement. Am I not allowed to do
To
that?
do that. Yeah. That's too
Right. And
limited. Yeah.
right. And the intention is never to do something like
No.
that, but
No.
it's sort of not really thinking through practically where our teams are and how
Correct.
everyone is operating and
Yeah.
trying to find flexibility where you can.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I
this
think
call, frankly, like we're not on Zoom AI, so just for anyone that's concerned or now has that question, but we could be, right? And
correct.
so the point is like, would we limit what we share on this discussion based on that? That would be challenging, right? In
Very
terms of,
much so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So hopefully some of those tips are a little bit helpful. I think just really trying to meet your clients where you are and trying
Yeah,
to meet your teams where they are is always the approach that has been the most successful for me, but that's also encouraged the most valuable insight and input from my clients and from my teams. It's like, here's my
right,
intention, here's how I think we can meet them. Is this working? Is what we put together solving that problem? Yes or
right,
no,
right,
right?
right,
And
right,
getting
right.
that constructive feedback back and forth is really helpful in an open dialogue.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, so I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about this, but not probably this tactical point. The regulations themselves are evolving
Every week.
rapidly. Yes, Data Privacy Day is next week, in case anyone has forgotten. How do you think about like keeping ahead, right, or even just keeping up? I'm sure it was a different experience at Live Person versus, where you are now at CB Insights. I'm super
Yeah.
curious how you think about that and what the differences look like between, two different businesses.
Yeah, definitely. So here at CB Insights, because my team of three, because we own privacy and compliance and AI governance as a whole, we have a couple tricks. One is we heavily rely on DataGrail Slack. So every
Thank you.
Slack message that I receive and my team receives, where there's a new regulation coming out that we think could impact our business, we end up logging that in a spreadsheet and tagging that
Mm,
as who on the team wants to tackle this and present it to the rest of us at our next team meeting. So we're
cool.
we're trying to constantly be in a state of what's the lay of the land? How does this potentially impact us? And let's go research it and figure it out. I have also set up sort of a kind of like a Google alert, but with ChatGPT, where
Smart.
where I'm asking it to only send me alerts for laws, regulations, new laws and new law and regulations, and changes to existing laws and regulations that I know will
Mm,
actually impact my business, and to send it
mm,
on a
regular
tiered
cadence.
approach,
Yeah.
right? So I don't want to get a weekly alert if there's nothing super important, but if there's a settlement, if there's a lawsuit, if there's
Mm,
some regulatory guidance that's being pushed out, I ask it to send that to me when it decides it's necessary to. And then when
yeah.
I get that, I also share that with my team, and we sort of decide who's going to tackle what and in what manner. I've seen that work really well at larger teams where you can have that sort of feed into a legal team structure, or maybe a workflow dynamic that you already have set up, and tag people based on their respective uh, topics that they own, whether it's HR or privacy or product counseling. So that could be one approach at LivePerson, again, because we had a whole separate privacy and compliance team with,
Mm,
individuals where that was their expertise. A lot of times we were sort of piggybacking off of each other. We would sort of get a law firm alert or a client memo from one of the law firms that we subscribe emails to, and
yeah.
share that with our privacy and compliance team. And they would say, oh, I got this alert. Like, let's set up a meeting at our, monthly or quarterly, collaborative get together and talk about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so there was a little bit more of a
Internal
collaborative approach there
dialogue.
as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, interesting to sort of compare the two, right? With the limited sort of size and scope of the team now, you're trying to use services that, the ChatGPT example of like pushing information to you that only when updates are made. I think that's really smart because to your point, otherwise the overload is just too much, right? If you were just getting a daily digest or a weekly
Yeah.
digest, you'd never be able to do anything else. Um,
Right. Well, a lot of the emails that I do get are great. They're law firm memos, they're updates, and I'd love to read them, but is it relevant? Is it not relevant?
right.
I have to find
Right.
time in the day to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, and so for folks wondering what that DataGrail Slack was, we actually just rebranded it this morning as Privacy Roundtable. So exciting, kind of an update there, and that's to really reflect the exact thing that Lauren just described, which was bringing folks from privacy, security, legal, product engineering together collectively to one table. So if you're looking for an invite, happy to make that happen. But that's what Lauren was referring to in terms of the Slack. And so we see a lot of activity there. We have ongoing updates of the changing regulations and how they affect teams. I think, last kind of thought there. Any final advice you would provide to folks? I think we saw it. The IAPP, this kind of lean privacy structure was really popular. I was actually surprised. The session that we had, we had standing room only in the back, and
Wow.
it was the Friday afternoon session, so I didn't think we were going to have that kind of volume. But yeah, any guidance you would have, just I know you're working with the lean team yourself. Any other
Yeah.
tips that you impart on us as we kind of wrap up?
Yeah, one thought that I had that I was reminds me of one of the sort of ethos that I learned during the badge program was that good governance doesn't always mean consensus and agreement,
Mm,
right? And so when you think about setting up an AI governance program, someone should own the decision, someone should
mm,
own the risk, and someone should own the outcome. And it doesn't necessarily mean, even at a small organization like myself, that I own all three, right?
right,
I might have an
right.
opinion or perspective on all three, but someone can still say, I don't think this is a good decision. And I can say, well, here's the risk if we move forward. Here's the
And
lack
do
of
we
a risk
accept that?
if we don't that, and what is the outcome if we based on the decision that we make. And so
Right.
I really like that as a thought process, because I think there's a lot of times where we can think that everyone has to agree in a governance meeting or in a governance structure,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if you don't have to,
Doesn't have to.
and it can
Yeah.
be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think that's actually really good advice. And Carla, yeah, completely. It's a racy,
yeah,
and that's why I think those racies are so important, especially with companies that are smaller. To your point, where you know you don't have to get agreement as you come to decisions. And I would say, as you look at different executive teams, how they work, I'm sure you see the same thing in the EOT meetings.
all the
The
time.
best
Yeah,
meetings are actually not where there's agreement. In fact, agreement, there's probably risk in that if you achieve a consensus too fast,
that's
to where
right.
you may want to challenge or bring in other perspectives to challenge the fast consensus. To your point,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah, well, this has definitely been fun. Hopefully, folks have enjoyed Lauren's commentary and tips and tricks. We will definitely host another one of these sessions in a couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for the next speaker. And I can tell you, it is another prominent leader in security. And so we kind of we'll
Can't
go
wait.
around the round table of security leaders, legal leaders, and privacy leaders. So keep an eye out for that announcement. And thank you once again, Lauren, for joining us,
Thanks
and
for
for folks
having me.
for tuning in. Until next time,
Have a great day, everyone.
see ya.